After Tartarus rises from the ground, Minato, Junpei, and Yukari are struck with awe. Junpei asks Mitsuru about why Tartarus exists, but she doesn't have an answer. Akihiko says that him and Mitsuru had only gone in to take a look, but this will be our first time exploring the labyrinth. Akihiko's all fired up until Mitsuru shuts him down and reminds him that he won't be going into Tartarus due to his injury. The crew walks in, and they're greeted by a flight of stairs leading towards a golden clock, with the doorway serving as an entrance to the labyrinth itself. Akihiko says that they're gonna have the three of us get a feel for the place. We're not being sent very far, and Mitsuru will be guiding us using her persona. To keep things in check, Akihiko decides to appoint us as the leader because, well, we're the main character. Another reason he has us acting as leader is because he doesn't want Junpei and Yukari getting cold feet when it's time to fight the shadows. We're about to head into Tartarus until the velvet key we were given earlier flashes and Minato walks towards a strange blue door and enters, leading him to the velvet room. Igor once again welcomes us and confirms everything leading up to this moment. He brought us in here to let us know about how the power of persona works and how our wielding of personas is more unique than the others. We're told to think of it as the number 0. Although it's empty, it holds infinite possibilities. What Igor is referring to is card number 0 in the major arcana, the Fool. The Fool represents the start to one's journey. With the major arcana following the story structure of the hero's journey, this means that the journey of the Fool can change in an infinite number of ways. This can also apply to the real world as well, in that the paths that we take in our lives has infinite possibilities. What Igor's basically saying is that Minato stands out because he's able to wield and summon multiple personas. When our enemies are defeated, we'll see, as Igor puts it, the faces of possibility in front of us. What he's really talking about is the shuffle system, where after winning some fights, cards are presented and shuffled, and the player has to uncover the one that they want. There's stuff like getting a free heal for the whole party, extra experience points, money, and a weapon. You can also get a persona from these shuffles, but bear in mind that you can only hold on to but so many, and you've got to commit to memory which personas are in your stock, because if you pick one that you already have, you'll fail the shuffle and get nothing. We're sent back to the real world, and it turns out that nobody but Minato can see the door leading to the Velvet Room. To everyone else, Minato is just blankly staring off in space. When Minato tries telling them about the door to the Velvet Room, they just brush it off for some reason. Kinda wish there was a caption where Minato explains to them what the Velvet Room is and why he spaces out like that. Would definitely help clear the air. With that stuff out of the way, it's time to explore Tartarus. The trio enters the dark labyrinth, nervous about what's to come. Mitsuru contacts them via her persona. She can see inside of Tartarus and talk to the team at any time. The reason she's outside is because the structure of Tartarus changes from day to day, meaning that without guidance from the outside, anyone inside will be completely lost. Based on where we are in the tower, we should expect to run into a few enemies. The game finally gives us control, and Mitsuru needs us to eliminate all enemies on this floor. In order to start a battle with enemies, you need to strike them with whatever weapon you have. If you strike them from behind, your team will have the advantage of taking their turn first. When an enemy gets hit while they can see you, nothing happens to the turn order, and the fight plays out like normal. Now if the enemy gets the jump on you, they get to go first, and that's the last thing you'd want to happen. Worst case scenario, one of them opens up with a big move that'll send you straight back to the title screen. Now we can finally delve into combat. Persona 3 has the hallmarks of a JRPG. You've got a menu system, enemies and allies have a turn order, and the fight doesn't stop until someone's party is cleared out. What makes the combat system of Persona or any Shin Megami Tensei game so unique is that it rewards you for exploiting enemy weaknesses. In games like Nocturne or SMT4, striking an enemy's weakness gives the entire party one extra turn. In Persona 3 and onward, it's slightly different. Instead of giving the party extra turns, those turns are given to individual party members. Critical hits also do the same thing. For example, if Minato hits an enemy's weakness, he'll be able to act again and again until there are no more weaknesses to hit. On top of that, when an enemy's weakness is exploited, they'll be stunned and they lose a turn. When all enemies on the field are down, this results in a series staple, the all-out attack.
Here's our chance for an all-out attack! Throw me at him! You have the potential to grow even stronger.
I like this system overall because it levels the playing field. In a lot of JRPGs, when you hit an enemy with something they're weak to, most of the time that attack just does more damage and nothing else. The press turn system is a huge game changer in allowing the player to turn the tide of battle. Be careful though, because enemies can do the same thing. If you get attacked with something you're weak to, that enemy gains an extra turn and you're in for a bad time. It's more than fair though if you think about it like this. If the game lets you spend battle after battle stun-locking enemies and just battering them with their weaknesses, those enemies are able to get away with the same thing. That's why you should always make sure to use the Analyze feature when running into new enemies. As the name implies, it shows what enemies are weak to or strong against. There's also a chance that they could resist, repel, or even drain certain attack types. Resist means that the enemy takes less damage from what you're trying to attack them with. Repel means the attack will be deflected and hit you instead, and drain means that the attack will heal the enemy. Skills are broken up into different types. Physical attacks themselves are broken up into categories too, those being Pierce, Strike, and Slash. This means that enemies will have some kind of resistance or weakness to one of these, but most of the time they don't. Doesn't mean you can just mindlessly spam the attack button though. That's all the more reason why you should make use of the Analyze feature in the first place. I will say though that it really sucks that physical attack types were removed in future Persona games, although I can kinda see why gun is its own thing in Persona 5, especially since its gameplay has callbacks to the early Persona titles. There's also different types of offensive spells too. Fire, wind, ice, and electric are all elemental spells, with ice and electricity either freezing or shocking the enemy. I'll talk about status ailments in a bit, just keep those two in mind for now. Hama and Mudo are classed as light and dark spells. Although under different names and element types, these two spells have one thing in common. They have a chance of instantly killing an enemy. No one is safe from this, so if you run into an enemy who uses these spells, it's best to get rid of them quickly. Another class of offensive spell is called Almighty. These are powerful spells that no one is weak or strong against. Since Almighty is non-elemental, it can't be drained, blocked, or repelled. With spells as useful as Almighty, they cost a lot of magic to use, which is why I only use them when I feel it's absolutely necessary. There are support spells too, and it's highly recommended that you get in the habit of utilizing them. Spells ending with the suffix Kaja means that they're buffs. Taru Kaja increases your attack, Raku Kaja increases your defense, and Suku Kaja increases your accuracy. On the other end of the spectrum are spells ending with Kunda. There's Tarunda, which decreases attack, Rakunda decreases defense, and Sekunda decreases accuracy. These spells are important because they can make and break a fight, especially boss battles. Want to keep yourself from getting hit with a Mudo spell? Throw on Suku Kaja and hit the enemy with Sekunda. Need to keep Yukari from getting her ass kicked by enemies with huge physical attacks? Give her Raku Kaja and run Tarunda on the attacker. Want to try to hit an enemy real hard? Buff yourself with Taru Kaja and use Rakunda on the enemy in conjunction. Stuff like this has actually made me more weary when playing other JRPGs. Back when I played Final Fantasy X, I almost always ignored the commands for buffs and debuffs, but after playing the Shin Megami Tensei games, I started using them more in FF10, and a lot of boss fights went by like a breeze. I'm honestly surprised I got as far as I did years ago when playing that game with barely any buffs. This being a JRPG, there are a number of status ailments that can change the way characters behave during combat. Frozen is caused by ice attacks. The victim gives up one turn and their evasion takes a nosedive, meaning that their chances of getting hit is pretty high. Shock is caused by electric attacks. It's pretty much the same thing as Frozen, except now the victim's chance of being hit by a critical attack is 100%. Charm is the best and worst kind of status. When a victim is charmed, they'll start acting against their respective party. They'll do stuff like attack their own allies, or even heal adversaries. I don't think I need to tell you that you don't want to be on the wrong end of this ailment. It's nice when the enemy turns on their party and gives you a free heal, but it's absolutely devastating when your own party members helps these guys out. Distress lowers your evasion and increases your chances of getting critted. Your defense will also be slightly lowered. Panic is just bad. When someone's in a panicked state, they can't use any of their skills until the ailment wears off, or until someone uses a spell or item to get rid of it. This one's the worst to get when it's down to the wire, and you absolutely need to use your persona. With fear, a party member's chances of getting stunned dramatically increases, and they'll be hit by crits more easily. That's not the only thing though. A party member hit with fear has a chance of withdrawing from the fight, leaving you short of manpower by one person. Rage is an ailment that, just like Charm, can work for and against you, depending on who has it. Anyone who has Rage will ignore all commands and only use physical attacks. Their attack power gets a huge increase, but this is all at the cost of defense, which is dramatically decreased. You can use this to your advantage depending on the enemy you're facing, but I still recommend curing anyone with Rage while you have the chance. And finally, Poison. This one's pretty straightforward. If you have it, your health takes a hit over time. The effects of Poison will be active even outside of battle, which means that if you want to cure this ailment, you need an item. There are also spells that you can use to give enemies these status ailments, but personally, I never use these. They're a waste of a turn and a huge flip of a coin. You're better off engaging them like normal. Now that I think about it, I never use these kinds of moves in any other JRPG as well, unless it's under very specific circumstances, which is incredibly rare. Two useful spells to keep on hand are Tetrakarn and Makadakarn. What they both do is put a barrier on the party that deflects whatever the enemy throws at you. Tetrakarn deflects physical attacks, and Makadakarn deflects all magic attacks except for Almighty. Another thing about Persona 3's combat that stands out is that you don't have control over any of your party members. The only way you can control them is through the tactics menu. You can have them on healing/support duty, order them to knock down enemies or deliver big hits, or just let them do whatever they want. This style of play has been a topic of controversy for years between fans of Persona 3. Those who hate the party being controlled by AI believe that this takes away control from the player and allows room for silly mistakes during the course of battle. Fans in favor of this system don't mind not being able to directly control anyone else in the party, and technically you are controlling them through the tactics menu. Not only that, but players favoring this system feel like this makes the game more immersive, making it feel like each party member has their own sense of agency. As a matter of fact, the director, Katsura Hashino, has gone on record and stated that this combat system was designed like this on purpose. In an interview with gaming website Play, he's quoted as stating the following, quote, "I think it's more fun to have the party members controlled by their AI, so each member's characteristics and personality are on vivid display." There were no objections raised among the Persona 3 development team either. It's a completely different story though. If the AI routines used in the game are limited, it wasn't well received by many of the Persona 3 players. We were on the AI crafting side, so I guess our tolerance level was higher than that of the players, end quote. Me personally, I'm fine with this combat system overall. The tactics menu does work, it's just that you have to be ready to change a certain party member's tactics as the circumstances of the fight changes. As much as people love to rag on this game's AI, blame for foolish decisions on a party member's end should also be shared with the player. With a battle system like this, observation is an absolute must. Like I said a second ago, as the battle changes, so should the tactics menu. Now, I know that I just got done ranting about people's misunderstanding of this system, but I still think it has some problems. The lack of control means that there's less precision with a party member's choice even when you've got them set to the correct tactic. I like being in control of the flow of combat and directly dictating who's gonna do what with full confidence. It's pretty much how every turn-based RPG is played, so it's no surprise that anyone playing Persona 3 for the first time would be caught off guard by this system. That's where Persona 3 Portable comes in. P3P added a ton of quality of life changes, with the most notable being the ability to directly control each party member. Direct control means that you now have complete access to their moveset, which means that you won't have to mess around with the tactics menu anymore. Even better is that you can go to the tactics menu and decide whether or not you want to have control of your party members at all. In addition to direct control, all party members now have the ability to guard. Really wish the PS2 version had that. For those who want to play Persona 3 with direct commands but don't want to sacrifice the presentation of the PS2 version, there are mods out there that allow you to directly control other party members, and they were made by a group of passionate fans whom love experimenting with PS2 mods and seeing what they can make out of them. While navigating Tartarus, the player has the ability to order the party to split up and walk around the rest of the floor. This means that the number of people in your party during combat will change depending on how far you are from them. There is an advantage to this though. The less people in your party, the more experience points you'll gain. Personally, I've only engaged enemies alone on occasion. It's not something I really go out of my way to do. Sure, fighting enemies with lower head count does add to the challenge, and it's nice that they reward you for stepping up to the plate, but it just adds unnecessary frustration. On normal difficulty alone, the RNG can sometimes be chaotic, and enemies will constantly use things like Mudo or even powerful spells the player hasn't had access to. I'd rather grind as a team and take the low XP payouts and hope I draw a wand card for extra points than masochistically throw myself at enemies that we already have a tough time with as a team. Thankfully, you can ask Mitsuru to call over one of the party members in case you find yourself in a tough battle. When the party split up, they'll find items and bring them back to you, and they'll even ask you if you'd like to advance to the next floor after coming across a flight of stairs. This is a great way to map out the floor and obtain items at a faster, more efficient rate. Now, what I'm about to bring up is really stupid, but I'm glad they fixed it in Portable. In order to check the status of each party member, you have to personally walk up to them, hit the talk button, and select the option to see their stats. You also have to do this if you want to equip them with armor or give them a weapon. This is a lot of unnecessary work to do something so simple. I get that they were trying to make you more attached to your party members through increased interactions with them, but this is just clunky. Now that we've had a taste of combat, Mitsuru orders us back to the entrance of Tartarus.
Welcome back. So, how was it? I see. Well, if you gained confidence, that's the best thing you could have achieved.
Wow, I never knew I had that kind of power. We kicked some ass. But damn, I'm beat.
That's because you were bouncing around like a little kid.
Yeah, you look pretty tired yourself, Yucatan.
I'm still trying to catch my breath, actually.
That's the effect of the dark hour. You'll become fatigued more easily.
That's gonna be another thing you have to deal with. In Persona 3, after going through battle after battle repeatedly, one or more party members will become tired. When they're like this, their combat performance goes down the drain. Evasion, accuracy, and defense all take a nosedive. If someone is tired, it's best to take them out of the party immediately. I'm a bit mixed on this. On one hand, this plays into Persona 3's themes about sleep, nighttime, and the various things related to those. It's also easy to believe that navigating a place like Tartarus and using your persona God knows how many times can take a toll on your mind and body. On the other hand, this can really screw you out of grinding for a specific character. It's one of those things that sits in the back of your mind, creating endless paranoia as you try to level up to face a boss. The tired stat doesn't discourage grinding, god no, but it makes new players afraid of fighting in Tartarus for a little bit longer. Sick is the worst status anyone can get. Anyone who's sick is more likely to get hit by status effects during fights, they'll take longer to recover from getting knocked down, and their stats will be lowered. To put it simply, the Shadows will have an easier time kicking their ass. Recovery time for someone that's sick is typically a week. After confirming everything with Mitsuru, we unlock the first social link of the game, the Fool. Each social link you come across in Persona 3 will be attached to one of the 22 major arcana so that it plays into the plot and themes for that specific character. With C's bearing card number 0, the Fool, this resembles not only the beginning of our journey, but the middle and end of it, along with the infinite number of ways this journey could change. As stated earlier, the story of the 22 major arcana is parallel to the structure of the hero's journey form of storytelling. Just like the Fool blissfully walking with his dog, everybody in this room is unaware of the twists and turns they'll face along the way. Before leaving Tartarus, Minato goes back to the Velvet Room, and this time Igor explains what his true role is. His job is to create new personas for us via a process called fusion. This is done by bringing two persona cards together to give birth to an entirely new persona. The number of possible fusions is about 170. Establishing social links will allow us to level up personas faster too, depending on the major arcana. Unfortunately, since I'm playing the PlayStation 2 version, the player isn't freely able to choose which skills from the old personas that they want to give to the new one. They'd go on to fix this in Portable though. Of course, you can't just fuse the biggest, baddest personas possible in the early game, you have to be a certain level to fuse the persona you want. There are different flavors of fusion. Of course, there's normal fusion with 2 personas like I mentioned. Then you have triple fusion, where you can fuse together 3 personas to create a powerhouse. As you progress, the game will slowly introduce new types of fusion, so make sure to experiment and see which new personas work best. Once the crew is done talking, they leave Tartarus and head back to the dorm. The next day, we arrive at Gekkoukan, and at the front gates we're stopped by a dude named Kenji. The guy doesn't have much to say, he just asks us how close we are to Yukari, and then writes her off because he's looking for other kinds of girls. Like, dude, why even ask about her in the first place? Anyways, we've got a morning assembly to attend. Everyone's in the auditorium, and the speaker gives Mitsuru the floor. Turns out that she was recently elected class president. Yukari and the main crew are talking amongst themselves, and Junpei mentions that the school is owned by the Kirijo group. Yukari, uncomfortable, says that she tries not to think about that. Then Mitsuru begins her speech and shares her vision for the coming school year.
However, change cannot occur without sustained effort and an unprecedented level of commitment. That is why we must restructure our daily lives to accommodate this lofty goal. I'd like each of you to dig deeply into your well of motivation and reevaluate your convictions.
The rest of the day plays out like normal, and school is over. From here on, the game gives us full control, allowing us to travel around the city, establish social links, go to the store, or raise our social stats. I will say that for a Neo Persona game, which is any Persona game released after Personas 1 and 2, this is the fastest the game gives us freedom. One common yet understandable complaint about Persona 4 is that the opening prologue goes on for way too long, spanning 3 to 4 hours before the player can dungeon crawl and experience the normal gameplay loop. Persona 5 kind of fixes this issue by throwing the player in at the deep end at the start of the game with the failed casino heist before the game slams the brakes and gradually introduces gameplay mechanics and gives you more freedom. On this day though, there aren't any social links available and all the school clubs are closed right now, so we've gotta wait a little bit before we can start making friends. Before moving on though, the way I'll be handling social links in this retrospective will be by giving a plot summary of whatever new social link we come across the moment it's introduced. Now, if a new social link is introduced right after a previous plot summary, I'll just save that one for later so that viewers don't get bogged down with back-to-back social link plots. This also cuts down on me having to gather footage of the social link throughout the game, so we all win, especially my hard drive. Minato leaves the school, and he witnesses Akihiko being sworn by a bunch of his fangirls. Junpei walks over, and he's pretty jealous of all the attention Akihiko's receiving. It's also revealed that he's the captain of the boxing team too. Akihiko then walks over and asks if we're free this afternoon, which we are. He wants us to meet him at Polonia Mall. He'll be at the police station. And then he tells his group of fangirls to piss off.
There. The police station? You mean we're not hanging out with your friends?
Who, these girls? I don't even know their names. They talk so much they give me a headache.
Later on at the Polonia Mall police station, we walk in and see Akihiko speaking with a police officer at the front desk. This guy's name is Officer Kurosawa, and he's no ordinary cop either. Kurosawa supplies C's with weapons and armor for their operations. Akihiko then gives us 5,000 yen each. Now, Kurosawa has connections, but maintaining such a shady practice isn't free, which is why we have to pay him for the stuff he's got. Akihiko then leaves us to shop for our own equipment. Kurosawa explains that his job is to maintain peace in Iwatodai, no matter the circumstances. Even though he doesn't have the potential, he still recognizes that something strange is going on here. So yeah, this is the weapon shop. Since I'm playing the PlayStation 2 version, Minato can use pretty much any weapon he wants. Short swords, bows, boxing gloves, you name it. In Portable, Minato is only able to equip one-handed swords, and in the female protag's case, she can only use spears. It'd be foolish to run through Tartarus without some form of protective gear, so make sure to remember to pick up some armor when you can. Shoes also play a role in increasing your evasion rate, which measures how likely you are to get hit by an enemy. This is a lot to handle because at the start, you'll barely have any money, being forced to grind for a pitiful amount in Tartarus. Thankfully, you can sell items that you don't need for some extra cash, so make sure to pick up some weapons during shuffle time. There's also accessories you can buy that gives you a boost to a specific stat or have some kind of effect during battle. After we leave the station, Junpei storms off in a pissed off mood because he feels like Akihiko lowballed us in terms of cash. With nothing else to do, we decide to return to the dorm as well. Minato arrives back at the dorm, and Mitsuru wants to speak with us for a second. With Akihiko still recovering from his injuries, we've been made the leader of the exploration group. Starting today, we'll now be able to ask Mitsuru to take us to Tartarus whenever it's evening. We're also allowed to go out at nighttime now. When speaking to Mitsuru, you can also ask about each party member's status and availability. Since these guys are still school students at the end of the day, not everyone's gonna be able to go to Tartarus on certain nights, so you have to keep that in mind before deciding to go there. Since I have no obligations tonight, a little dungeon crawling can't hurt me. We're back in Tartarus again, and this time the training wheels are off. Before entering the labyrinth, Mitsuru tells us that there's a barricade a few floors up from us, and these barricades can be found all over the tower. Even though the layout of each floor changes every day, these barricades remain in a fixed position. What Mitsuru needs us to do is reach the first barricade. Once inside the labyrinth, Mitsuru performs a scan and finds that there's a great source of power somewhere above us. Although it's far away, we should still keep our guard up at all times. One awesome thing I forgot to mention was how you can easily distinguish the type of role each character plays in combat. Minato, of course, is the all-arounder, the jack of all trades, having access to various kinds of abilities all throughout the game. Minato also has access to fusion spells that can only be used when you have two specific personas in your stock. These spells have various effects and can dramatically turn the tide of battle depending on which one was used and the circumstances of the fight. For example, to use Cadenza, Minato needs to have Orpheus and Apsaras in his stock. What this spell does is heal each party member's HP by 50% and increases everyone's evasion rate. The best part is that Cadenza stacks with Tsukukaja, meaning it'll be damn near impossible for enemies to land a hit on you. Junpei uses pure strength to take down enemies, and he even has Rakukaja on him in case you need a defense buff. He swings around large two-handed swords that deal a lot of damage. His magic isn't very strong, but it's good to have whenever you come across an enemy that's weak to fire. Junpei is weak to wind attacks, which is something that tends to catch a lot of players off guard since he has a fire spell with him, and you'd expect him to be weak to something like ice or whatever. All in all, Junpei is incredibly useful in the early game if you want to drain the foe's HP and end fights faster. Yukari is a powerful magic user, acting as both a healer and a mage. She uses wind magic to take on enemies and keeps the party healed with the Dia line of skills. Her weakness is lightning. When it comes to melee, Yukari is not very powerful, using bows to attack. Not helping is that she can't handle physical attacks very well, having a chunk of her HP erased whenever the enemy decides that they want to throw hands or whatever appendages they have with her. This is made all the more worse when an enemy decides to use physical skills like Assault Dive or Kill Rush. I think it's best to keep Yukari around and keep leveling her, because when she learns Media, a spell that heals the whole party, fights with enemies become a lot more tolerable. It's a literal game changer. After doing some climbing, the trio finds themselves in a large room that's more organized than the other floors we've been traversing. These rooms are home to bosses called Guardians, but unfortunately, Minato is too tired to fight this one tonight, so it's back to the dorms we go. The following morning, as Minato walks towards the school gate, he's approached by Kenji, that same kid from the other day that asked about Yukari. He says that he thought the rumor about Yukari and Minato being together was true, and then walks with us to class. Fast forward to the end of the school day, and Kenji finds himself at our desk, inviting us out for a bowl of ramen. After some small talk at the ramen joint, we unlock another social link. This is card number 1 of the Major Arcana, the Magician. Before I get to talking about Kenji's social link, let me talk about what social links do. Each social link you unlock allows you to earn bonus experience points on a fused persona that matches the arcana of the link itself. If the respective social link isn't unlocked yet, prepare for some drawn-out grind sessions. The higher the rank of the social link, the more experience points you'll gain from that arcana's fusion. If you want a better chance at reaching the next rank of any social link, you need to choose the correct dialogue option. I really like how the social simulation elements ties into your potential combat performance. Choosing the wrong dialogue option results in an outburst from your friend and a damaged relationship, which means you've got to spend time with that friend until they want to have an actual conversation again, allowing you to return to normal progression of that link. This results in a ton of lost time that could have been spent with other friends or increasing our social stats. Thankfully, it's not too difficult to choose the wrong dialogue option, and there are guides online too. Anyways, let's take a look at Kenji's social link. Conversation at the ramen joint switches to the topic of girls, and Kenji says that the one he's looking to ask out has him nervous because it's his teacher. Now listen, I'm not gonna sit here and fault Kenji for having those kinds of thoughts. It's part of being a teenager. My issue with Kenji is that this fucker's really committed to asking out his teacher as if that doesn't come with a ton of problems. Anyways, Kenji wants us to be there when he asks his teacher out, so we have no choice but to go along with this plan. At the school corridor, Kenji meets up with Minato, and he's amped up like he's about to make the winning play at the Super Bowl. After going off screen for some time, Kenji comes back excited because his teacher, Miss Kanao, said yes. Well, not exactly, but before he could say a word, she asked if he wanted private lessons, and she also invited Kenji to her house. Later on at a burger joint, Kenji starts bragging about the fact that he asked out Kanao before anyone else, and starts rambling on about how humans are attracted to each other, I guess. Let me remind you that Kenji's talking about all this within earshot of dozens of other people. The duo meets up at school again, and Kenji tells us that he's gonna pass on eating ramen today because he's checking out a cram school so that he can get into a good college. Then he starts waxing poetic about the importance of going to college to secure your future, or you'll end up as a loser. Sometime later, we find ourselves back at the burger spot, and Kenji seems a bit worried. He'd seen a magazine on Miss Kanao's table regarding marriage, and Kenji makes up his mind. As soon as he graduates from high school, he's gonna marry Miss Kanao. As if Kenji's family is gonna let him take it that far once they find out about her. And then he starts ranting loudly about marrying Kanao, to the point where pretty much the entire restaurant can hear him. At Naganaki Shrine, a panic-ridden Kenji tells us that the entire school knows about him and Kanao, and it's spun into an entire scandal. Well, I wonder why that is. Because of this scandal, Kanao is being transferred to a school all the damn way out there in Kyushu. By the way, if you want to earn points towards the next rank, you've got to enable this idiot and tell him to fucking follow her there. I'm not making this up. In the wake of the scandal, Kanao has completely stopped answering all of Kenji's calls and text messages. Kenji assumes that she's doing this for his protection, but he's still maddeningly worried. The two of us are at Port Island Station, and Kenji breaks some major news to Minato. He's going to Kyushu with Kanao, so this is gonna be the last bowl of ramen we have together. May I ask how the fuck Kenji's parents even approved of this? Kanao enters the scene within earshot of us, and she's speaking to a man. It turns out that Kenji misunderstood what was going on with Kanao and was under the impression that she and him were dating. She's actually getting married to the man standing before her. It also turns out that she's leaving today, too. A heartbroken Kenji breaks down in tears, upset that there was nothing between them in the first place. After comforting Kenji, he decides to go back home. In the final scene of this social link, we find ourselves at the ramen shop, where our friendship first started. Kenji shows some unexpected growth here, too. He realizes that he wasn't really in love with Kanao, but more so in love with the idea of being in a relationship with a teacher, kind of like a fetish, so to speak. After that little speech, Kenji orders some more ramen, and that marks the end of the Magician's social link. I think that Kenji's social link would have been better had Kanao left Iwatodai earlier in the arc. This would give us an upset Kenji who's at first unable to accept that the woman he thought he was in love with has suddenly moved away and there's nothing he can do about it. The following portions of the social link could show Kenji trying to get with another teacher, failing at that, and realizing that maybe he should stick with girls his own age. After Kenji awkwardly tries talking to other girls, the link would end with Kenji successfully asking a girl out, moving past his obsession with older women, and focusing on carving out a future for him and his new love. Having it play out like that would have done a way better job at showing Kenji's growth, showing him move past his immature and impulsive antics. The Magician is the second card of the Major Arcana. It symbolizes the willpower and determination it takes to achieve your goals. Whether it be studying to graduate with your desired degree, saving to buy a house, or taking steps towards bettering your mental health, in the end, it all depends on you. Hardship and/or failure is a part of the process, and you shouldn't let your fear of such stand in the way of what you hope to accomplish. On the table of the Magician lies the four elements of Earth, Fire, Wind, and Water, accompanied by the infinity symbol. This is the Magician telling the Fool to take what he needs to complete his journey, but to also remember that it can end in an infinite number of ways. Change can't occur unless you step up to the plate. If there's something you want dearly, fight for it instead of sitting around wishing and waiting for it to fall in your lap. After hanging out with Kenji, I head back to the dorm and go straight to bed so that I can be ready for Tartarus the next evening. After speedrunning through the school day, the game informs us that we can join some school clubs, which means access to more social links. We're given the choice between track, swimming, and kendo. It doesn't really matter which club you pick since the social link that follows plays out the same. I decided to join the kendo club because kendo's pretty badass. We're then introduced to Yuko Nishiwaki, who's the team manager, and Kazushi Miyamoto, the up-and-coming captain of the kendo team. Kaz promises us that he's gonna give us the training of a lifetime while we're here, and then we unlock his social link, card number 7 of the Major Arcana, the Chariot. Now I said that I was gonna break down each social link's plot as I came across them, but I feel like it's a bit too soon given that I just finished doing that moments ago. For now, let's put a pin in that. We've gotta go to Tartarus to kick some serious ass. Alright, it's time to take on the first Guardian. Guardians are boss fights within Tartarus that are found in fixed locations of the tower, as opposed to being placed haphazardly. You cannot progress unless you defeat these guys. Some of them are easy, and some of them, yeah, they can be a total pain in the ass. For the first Guardian battle, I did not have enough money to buy armor for Junpei and Yukari, which resulted in a lot of close calls. Adding to the difficulty was Junpei being weak to wind and getting struck by it, but thankfully the AI decided not to focus more wind attacks on him. It also pays to set Yukari's tactics to healing during boss fights because she can save you from a lot of game overs. The fight is completed, and I head back to the entrance and immediately save before going back to do tons of off-screen grinding. At the school gates, Minato does more of his textbook eavesdropping and gets word that he can rank up his social stats at the arcade in the mall. We make it to lunch, and the game does this thing where the social links that we've met up in school line up to tell us that they want to hang out after class. This is the game signaling to us that these specific social links may be ready to reach the next rank. Problem is that you can only hang out with one person per day, and there are only but so many in-game days to do specific things. Make sure to spend your time wisely. There's another thing I forgot to mention about the social links in this game. If you don't hang out with any of these guys for a certain amount of days, they'll get pissed at you, and you have to spend God knows how many in-game days repairing the relationship if you want to continue ranking them up. This does add to the immersion and the social sim aspect, but it also piles on pressure for the player. Not only do they need to worry about keeping track of equipment and leveling, but now they've got to worry about maintaining dozens of relationships so that they don't lose out on fusion bonuses and the rewards that come with maxing out the link. Persona 3 Portable fixes this by having no limit to the number of days you can be away from a social link, so now there's no added pressure. Okay, so let's get to Kazushi's social link. In the middle of practice, Kazushi starts complaining about pain in his side, so Minato tells him to toughen up and fight through it. Kaz realizes he's outmatched and forms a friendly rivalry with Minato, vowing to beat us one day. Yeah, okay, Vegeta. Before resuming practice, Kaz once again complains about his knee pain, but decides to put up with it until practice is over. This totally won't have any consequences. Practice ends, and Minato runs into Yuko, and the two part ways after some small talk. Next meetup, things are going on like normal, but out of nowhere, Kaz collapses, holding onto his knee in pain. At the nurse's office, once we're left alone, Kaz lets us in on a secret. His knee has not felt right ever since we first met. The pain won't go away, and Kaz can't afford to miss out on even a day of practice. The reason he's pushing himself so hard is because he wants to prepare for a national competition coming up the following year. After chopping it up for a bit, the two head home. Another day of practice goes by, but Kazushi is strangely missing. On the way out of Gekkoukan, we're stopped by a flustered Kazushi at the front gates, whom tells us that his mom took him to the hospital after he told her about his knee. He's annoyed by everyone's constant worry for him, to the point where he tells Minato to keep Kaz's hospital visit a secret. Remembering that he was too late to make it to practice today, Kaz decides to go home instead. At the next practice, Kazushi is once again absent. Minato makes it to the shoe lockers only to find Kaz on the ground kneeling in pain. Kaz tells us that he got the results back from his last exam, but is in so much pain that he needs help walking. Even though Kaz's knee is in serious pain, he's gonna disobey his doctor's orders and continue practicing. This is some serious Mamba mentality. Next practice, Kaz is absent yet again, but Yuko approaches us saying that Kaz texted her telling Minato to come to Iwatodai Station. We find ourselves at the station and see Kaz sitting on a set of stairs in a bad mood. The results from his last medical exam showed that his hamstring was being thoroughly annihilated. If Kaz keeps practicing while he's like this, he may never walk again. The reason why his hamstring is getting destroyed is because he puts too much strain on it during practice. Despite that, Kaz doesn't want to waste any time. He wants to be the #1 athlete in Japan. This isn't just a goal though, it's a promise that Kazushi made to a 5-year-old nephew of his that got into an accident resulting in his leg getting messed up. The good news is that he might recover after undergoing physical therapy. However, the pain is too much for the boy and he doesn't want to go through with it. So Kaz made a deal with his nephew. If he becomes the #1 athlete in Japan, his nephew will have to go through physical therapy. That's why Kaz had been pushing himself so hard, disobeying doctor's orders and destroying his own body as a result. Kazushi apologizes for all the trouble he's caused us, saying that Minato was the only one he could talk to. We're then asked to tell Yuko to talk to Kaz directly about this so that Minato is not wrapped up in any drama. We're brought back to practice and other members of the team start to notice that Kaz is performing poorly than usual. Yuko calls Kaz to the coach's office and Minato leaves practice. Kazushi catches up with us near the school gates and says that Coach is worried about him. Thankfully, Coach doesn't know about the hamstring injury and Kaz managed to survive practice today. However, Coach warns Kaz that if he's injured, he has to quit the team. In an effort to keep his promise to his nephew, Kaz decides to keep the injury secret. The young man makes up his mind. He's gonna keep practicing until he inevitably damages his knee. If that happens, Kaz wants us to be the next captain. At today's practice, Coach calls for Kazushi, demanding that he come to the nurse's office. Yuko could already tell that he's in bad shape, and that we might have something to do with this, and asked us to follow her. Turns out that Coach spoke to Kaz's mom, and she told him everything about his condition. Coach scolds Kaz, urging him to quit before things get worse. Yuko enters the room pleading for Kaz to take some time off, but of course he refuses. Coach then turns his attention towards Minato, asking if we were encouraging him to practice on a bad knee, but Kaz speaks up and comes clean about everything. Then the rest of the team enters the room and vouches for Kaz. Coach decides to allow Kaz to continue training for now, just to see how things will go. The only condition is that Kaz must stop practicing when Coach tells him to. We're dismissed and it's on to the next practice sesh. Coach asked for the team to gather around so that he can deliver an announcement. If anyone sees Kaz struggling, they need to stop him immediately. Later on at the ramen joint, Kaz tells us that when he goes to his sibling's place to see his nephew, he has to personally lift him so that he can get in the bathtub, and he dreads the idea of not being able to use the bathroom anymore if he loses the ability to walk. With everything that's happened so far, Kaz feels like he can open up more to Minato and ask him to do the same. Kaz also expresses guilt for causing the team to worry about him immensely, but vows to win for everyone's sake. During today's practice, Yuko asks Kaz about his knee, and he says it's not doing so good, to the point where he can't put a lot of weight on it. Yuko tells him to take a break and orders another team member to massage his leg. Kaz feels bad because he feels like he's causing that guy to lose out on practice, but the dude doesn't mind. After practice, Kaz catches up to Minato and says that he needs to talk to us about something serious, so the two meet up at a seafood place to talk. He starts by giving us some sports tape that he used to keep as a good luck charm. Kazushi then breaks the big news. He's gonna go in to have surgery done on his knee. He won't be able to recover in time for the big meet, but he doesn't mind. Kaz doesn't want the team to suffer because he's too stubborn to not seek help, and plus, in Kaz's mind, even after winning the competition, it would feel like a hollow victory. Kaz realizes that this whole time, he was being selfish, putting his need to win over the concerns of everyone around him. Despite that, he's not just gonna give up on winning. That's a part of who he is and no one else can change that. For now though, Kaz is gonna put recovery over winning. As a start, Kaz is gonna tell his nephew about everything that happened and go through rehab with him. This social link was pretty damn good. A lot of people at first glance will call Kazushi a stubborn, overconfident, selfish meathead whom won't accept the help that he's offered and brings down everyone around him without any concern. However, Kaz is more than that. While those things are true, it's safe to say that in the back of Kaz's mind, even he knew he was wrong for everything he did. It's not just winning that drives Kazushi, but it's also being an inspiration to his nephew, whom looks up to him a lot. Kaz was more than willing to help his nephew get back on track, even if it meant permanently damaging his own body. That's where Kazushi's tarot card comes into play. Kaz's social link lies under card number 7 of the Major Arcana, the Chariot. The Chariot represents overcoming challenges and obstacles and obtaining victories by way of keeping everything around you in control. Maintaining focus and keeping a cool head will be your key to victory. The art for the Chariot portrays a figure sitting between two sphinxes that are pulling a cart. One is black and one is white. This represents the rider trying to maintain control of the opposing creatures in order to safely make it to his destination. Kaz was trying to stay in control of the situation and hide his injury so that he could make it to nationals and convince his nephew to go to physical therapy. As you already know, this goes wrong, but Kaz feels more at peace with recovering than trying to keep his injury a secret. Kaz may have once lost control, but he's taken it back in the form of letting his body heal and going along with the treatment. That's it for the Chariot social link. One social link and a floor guardian later, Minato finds himself at a bookstore ran by an elderly couple. This is one of those annoying social links where they need you to run around town to find whatever they're asking for before you're allowed to start it. Buckminchi, the old man, needs us to obtain a leaf from a persimmon tree at Gekkoukan because it brings back memories of his time at the school. Minato gets the leaf, and he's now able to start the social link. Gonna have to come back to this one later though. After climbing some floors, the trio finds themselves at a dead end, and we can't access the next floor until the story progresses. That doesn't mean you should stop grinding though. After getting back from school, Mitsuru informs us that the internet line that was destroyed by the shadow should be up tomorrow. Junpei pipes up and asks if we play video games, and he hands us a copy of an MMO called Innocent Sin Online. This gives us access to the Hermit social link, which can only be accessed on days where there's no school. Also, there's a ton of callbacks to the Persona 2 duology during that little plotline. Let's save that for when I get to breaking down this social link though. Minato's phone rings, and it's a call from Elizabeth, who asks us to swing by the Velvet Room real quick so that she can talk to us about something. Once there, Elizabeth introduces us to side quests. As implied, if you do these, you get a reward. Some of these have deadlines though, and you might find yourself looking up a guide for completing a few as well. I'd strongly recommend doing so, as a lot of these rewards can help you out in Tartarus. Junpei's at our desk and tells us that Akihiko's at the hospital getting a checkup, and he gave Junpei the task of bringing him something. Yukari comes in out of nowhere and kills Junpei's vibe, saying that Aki only asked Junpei because he's the only one that's got nothing going on after school. Ouch. What Akihiko wants Junpei to deliver is a class roster. Yukari decides to tag along, and the three head to the hospital. In Akihiko's hospital room, we see a strange man in a hat and purple coat sitting in the corner. Aki makes an appearance out of nowhere, and the mysterious man leaves in a frustrated mood. That's Akihiko's friend from school, and he's here because he knows a few people with apathy syndrome and came over to discuss it with him. Junpei hands Aki the roster, and Yukari asks why he chose boxing. The reason why Aki chose boxing is because he wants to protect himself and others. He knows what it's like to feel powerless, and never wants to experience that feeling again. Then Junpei and Yukari break the tension.
Besides, I'm curious to see how strong I can get. It's like a game, only I'm competing against myself.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. You know, I'm into games too.
Yeah, video games.
Hey, they're good for hand-eye coordination.
It's midnight, and Minato is awoken by the young boy from last month. He warns us that in 1 week, there will be a full moon, telling us that we'll encounter one of them, as he puts it. After telling us to prepare, he disappears. Let's fast forward to 1 week later. School's over for the day, but Minato can't shake the feeling that something might be wrong, so as a precaution, he heads straight back to the dorms. The game then cuts to the control room during the dark hour. Mitsuru is trying to operate some kind of communication device, but to no avail. It turns out that Mitsuru's persona, Penthesilea, is too weak to scan for shadows outside of Tartarus. After some chatter about how powerful Minato is, Mitsuru picks up a reading for a large shadow. Both of them shift into emergency mode and wakes up the three of us. Once we're all in the room, Mitsuru explains the situation with us and tells Akihiko to stay at the dorm to wait for Akutsuki. Akihiko appoints Minato as leader and tells Mitsuru to let us go out first so that she can prepare. At the train station, the three of us sit around waiting bored for Mitsuru, and she finally arrives on her motorcycle. Just like Tartarus, Mitsuru will be providing support from outside, so a job like this shouldn't be too out of the ordinary. The shadow is located on a monorail not too far from the station. We're gonna have to walk on the tracks because all electronics are inoperable during the dark hour, except for Kirijo-made items like Mitsuru's motorcycle. Once on the tracks, we're told that the monorail is 200 meters away. We make it to the train and climb inside to investigate, and all of a sudden the doors slam shut, trapping the three of us. A couple train cars later, we run into a shadow, but instead of attacking us, it goes in the opposite direction. There's some deliberation between everybody, and Minato decides that it's safer to approach this carefully. Then Junpei pulls a Leroy Jenkins and breaks away from the party so that he can take on the shadow. After surviving an ambush by two other shadows, our focus is now on chasing after Junpei. It's not like we have much of a choice anyway, otherwise the enemy will slowly start to pick us off. A few cars later, we find Junpei trying and failing at taking on a group of enemies. The shadows are taken out, and after a brief moment, the train starts moving on its own thanks to the large shadow. There's another problem. If we don't stop this thing, it's gonna crash head-on into another train. Mitsuru senses a strong signature in the front car. Assuming that that's the one in control, if we take them out, we'll be able to stop this thing. Then the game puts us on an 8-minute time limit to get to the front car. I don't think I need to tell you to not waste time. Take down enemies with your strongest attacks and move through the train car as quickly as possible. One thing that's definitely not helping is the fact that the clock still counts down during victory animations. Now I'm getting flashbacks to the first reactor in Final Fantasy VII. After taking down some enemies, we're met with the large shadow. Also, don't be alarmed about the letters on her breast. They don't stand for what you're probably thinking about. The letters B and J in this context stands for Boaz and Jachin, which were two large bronze pillars seen at the entrance of Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. These pillars are also seen on the design of the High Priestess, the second card in the Major Arcana. The fight with the Priestess begins, and the first thing I do is fire off a cadenza because I want to minimize as much damage as possible so that I can avoid wasting time with rifling through the menus for some kind of healing. After dealing some damage to her, Priestess decides to summon a couple shadows, making this already tense fight even more annoying. Now you've got to put up with juggling between dealing damage, managing status effects, and making sure everyone's HP stays up, all under a time limit. In hindsight, I should have cast Rakukaja on Yukari because she almost gets knocked out multiple times over the course of this fight. What's also frustrating is when an attack misses, needlessly wasting time. Junpei, Minato, how do you miss that? It is one big-ass target. These guys could not touch water even if they fell out of a boat. With just above 2 minutes left, the absolute worst happens. Yukari gets knocked out, forcing me to revive her. 90 seconds remain, and Minato lands the killing blow, but there's no time to celebrate. Even with the shadow destroyed, the monorail is still moving. Nobody here knows how to use the control panel, but Minato steps up and works some magic, bringing the monorail to a screeching halt and saving the day.
Did we stop?
I think so.
Is everybody all right?
Yeah, we're okay. My knees are shaking.
Dude, I'm like drenched in sweat.
I'm so glad you're safe. I'm sorry I couldn't do more on my end. I don't detect any more shadows. You guys did a great job, so come on home.
Mitsuru calls Akihiko and Ikutsuki at the control room, letting them know that the shadow was eliminated. Akihiko begins wondering what the shadows are up to if they're doing something as organized as taking over a monorail, but Ikutsuki promises to look into it. The following morning, Elizabeth calls our phone and informs us that a previously blocked path in Tartarus is now open. Things are finally starting to heat up around Iwa Todai.